This is Julie and Thomas Hobby, and welcome to the first episode of the Marriage Puzzle Podcast. We hope you all had a happy and safe 4th of July, and we'll just get started. A quick intro about us is Thomas and I have been married for almost 15 years, and we currently have twin boys who are 7 years old, as well as a 2-year-old daughter.
Yeah, so like Julie said, this is our first episode of this podcast, and we're super excited that you have chosen to click on it and listen to us, and we're so excited to have you along for this journey with us. We wanted to just start this first episode by letting you know a little bit about why we're doing this podcast, how it came to be, and what kind of things we're going to be talking about. So Julie, do you want to give everyone a little bit of info about how the idea for this originated?
Yeah, so earlier this year, we actually got a chance to go on a road trip. Just us, no kids. The kids were with grandma.
It was amazing.
And we recommend it. So kind of a cross-country road trip where we had lots of time to talk and be together. And so we just started talking about our passions, what we wanted to do with life or in our life or in our goals, but also maybe what was lacking. And so I started kind of honing in on my feelings there. Back in December of 2020, we actually experienced a miscarriage. And so, like I said, we have our 2 boys and our girl, and we wanted to have a 4th, and then suddenly lost it in December. And that was just such a traumatic experience for both of us, and although we processed it very differently. Mm-hmm. And so I'm actually in the process of writing a book about our story, and my heart is just to help other women and other husbands, from the husband's perspective.
And family members.
Yeah, family members, friends, people who have not just experienced a miscarriage, people who have not experienced a miscarriage but are around people and want to learn more, just because it was such a traumatic experience, but like I said, but also a very lonely experience. And so through that process, I think I began to learn a lot about myself. We had to process together in our marriage. And so I used to be kind of quiet, not shy. I can talk and be loud and social, but definitely more of a private person. But I think the miscarriage has given me that desire to start opening up about it and helping more people and speaking up. And so, yeah, Thomas, you help a lot of people with what you do. And so on the road trip, I just said, like, I want to help people too, and not just write a book, but something I could use, our voice together, something we could do together to help people.
Yeah, and that's where this all kind of originated. And like Julie said in the beginning, we have twin 7-year-old boys. So this road trip was the first time in 7 years we had an uninterrupted conversation. Yeah. It was amazing. So for 7 years, we probably had this stuff on our hearts, and it took having to get on this road trip to be able to have the time to explore something like this. That road trip was great for us for healing from that, to just kind of get back on the same page and moving the same direction in our marriage. And it just allowed us to really explore the depths of what we want to do, what we wanted to move forward with, and how we could find a way to do something together that would help people. And so we landed on this. Like Julie said, I have some ways that I get to help people. My business is one way. I'm a personal financial coach, so I get to help people with their money. I help singles and married couples, and it's great. But we realized on this road trip that every marriage deals with money, and that's one of the areas that we'll explore. It's not the only area.
Have too.
Yeah, it's not the only area we're going to talk about. No. So don't think this is just a money podcast or anything like that. It's just one of the things we're going to explore. But we also decided that this was just one of those things we could do together. We have 15 years of experience in marriage, almost. We're coming up in September, will be 15 years. So we've got 15 years of experience. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're experts, right? But it gives us, a place to start if we're trying to help anybody who has less than 15 years of experience. Julie, why did we decide on the name Marriage Puzzle for this podcast?
Yeah, that's funny. That did not come about on the road trip. Just the idea and what we wanted to talk about and what we wanted to do and how to help people. But it was funny because how we landed on Marriage Puzzle, we kind of looked at each other like, we don't even like puzzles. And we play games and stuff as even after the kids go to bed. As a couple, we have fun. But puzzles we've tried on vacations or something. I just don't have the patience to put together a puzzle. But if you think about the experience of like the idea of a puzzle is great, right? The experience of picking it out, buying the puzzle and then trying to put it together. The picture on the outside looks amazing, but once you open the box, there's a ton of pieces. It's messy, and you're trying to fit it all together, turn over different puzzle pieces with surprises along the way. And so when we were thinking about that analogy, it really is kind of like our view on marriage, or we view marriage as a puzzle. So it's messy, it can be fun, but it's a really mess as you turn over, puzzle piece at a time. It doesn't all come together that first day of marriage when you say I do. And so we have lots of stories that we've learned along the way, and we want to be able to tell our stories and help you through yours one puzzle piece at a time.
Yeah, and we went through a few iterations of this while we were on the road trip, talking about how we get information out to be able to help people. We talked about a book, we talked about different options. And finally, we settled on a podcast. And I think a big reason that we settled on that is because I'm also the host on another podcast called Redefining Manliness. That podcast is specifically directed and geared towards men. And so I have a little bit of experience in that. I started that sometime in 2020. And, we've been going for a good few months now on that one. So, we'll leave some links to that in the show notes. So if you want to go and check that one out as well, that's great. Wives, you can feel free to listen to it and tell your husbands what they need to learn, and send it to them so that they can listen as well. But I think that's where we kind of landed on the ideas. I had a little experience there. Like you said, you have typically been more of a private person and quiet, but you do talk.
I like to write more than get on a stage, but
exactly. So at least this way, we don't have a camera in front of us. It's just you and me in the room, just in front of a microphone. So we felt like this would be a good way to get some information out there to everybody. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about on this podcast. We are going to be doing some book reviews. Julie is much more of a reader than I am, so I'm going to learn to read more books as we go through this. It's going to be a muscle that I have to work on and grow in.
Was that thing like readers are leaders? Or leaders are readers?
Yeah, something like that. But
whichever way you spin it.
Whatever. I'm not much of a reader. I've just never really been able to sit still long enough to sit and read books, so I might be getting the audiobooks.
I was to say, audiobooks, we did that on the road trip too. So we had hours that don't think our marriage is like, we talk nonstop. We just had a lot to catch up on. But what we did was listen to a whole audiobook, and we would pause it every chapter and discuss it. And so that's something with books. I was going to say you are good at like doing something with me. Mm-hmm. Read a chapter, I read a chapter, even, if it's paperback or audiobooks. So obviously there'll be more marriage content books that some great authors and people have already put out that we're gleaning from that we get to now tell you guys about.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's going to be one aspect of the podcast. We're going to be reading books. We're going to be putting information out there. When we start reading a book, we'll let you guys know what that is, so you can feel free to get it and read along with us. We haven't sorted out how we'll do that, if we'll just kind of sprinkle things in, or if sometimes we might take a book and we might just go chapter by chapter and really just dive in per episode and talk about it. And that might be how you want to follow along with it. we have plans to have other couples on the podcast with us, and interview them, people from all different walks of life. Maybe they come from blended families, or maybe they're, even older than us, could be our parents. Maybe we'll dive into some different scenarios like that and see what works for everybody, and how we can get some more information out there.
We already have contacts with, like you said, marriages that have blended families, like remarried, military marriage, military families, people who are in maybe 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, 15 like us, or further along. So, and always feel free to let us know what you would like, who you would like to hear from, or what you would like to hear about. So when we do those interviews, we can kind of make sure that we're getting what you want in your marriage puzzle.
Exactly. And that leads us to topical discussions. Some of the things we're going to be doing are just picking topics and discussing them. We've got a whiteboard here in our office with some topics written out on it. Communication is going to be a big topic we're going to start hitting right off the bat. We already mentioned we'll probably throw money in there somewhere at some point. All different kinds of things. We've said that we're coming up on 15 years of marriage, so we've got an idea rattling around about how we can do 15 lessons through 15 years of marriage, and so that might be individual topics that are all broken out and things like that. So that's kind of what you can expect coming out of the podcast, what we're going to talk about. So what's the podcast going to be? When is it going to happen?
Yeah, you know this. It's on your calendar.
That doesn't mean I know it. Just because it's on my calendar doesn't mean I know it.
Yeah, we do communicate well, and we also have to put things on the calendar so we know what we're doing with the kids.
Yeah, so that lets you know we don't communicate perfectly.
It's on the calendar. No, so our podcast is going to be a weekly podcast. So this just launched here July 5th on Monday. So expect us back next Monday and every Monday after that moving forward. So weekly podcasts. And our goal is to keep them not too long unless we just really, really dive into a topic that you can't shut us up about. But so that you can listen quickly on a run or a drive.
Taking the kids to school.
Taking the kids to school. I was going to say while you're doing the dishes. I don't know, whenever you listen to your podcast, it keep us in the rotation because we'll come at you every Monday for a weekly podcast. We're also out already on Facebook and Instagram. So even though this is our first podcast launch, we've been active on Facebook and Instagram at Marriage Puzzle. So follow at Marriage Puzzle on both channels. And if you do that, you can go back and look at our post already to learn more about us. We posted our story and pictures of us and even our kids, and just really want to be more of an open book there and do life with you as we share our stories and our messy marriage puzzle. And so also go over to marriagepuzzle.com because in addition to the weekly podcast and social media, we will also be posting blog posts. I write them, but Thomas contributes to them. So I'm a mom. I put Thomas and Julie, but we'll put blog posts up on the 1st and 15th of each month. And some of those are one-off topics that were on our hearts. And some of it will be maybe expanded versions from the podcast that we just didn't get to talk about that you can then go and read. So lots of things, lots of ways to find us and connect with us as we go on this journey together.
Yeah, for sure. And just a quick note on the website, marriagepuzzle.com. You can also subscribe to our email newsletter on there so that you can get an email when, we have stuff to announce, whether that's a new blog post coming out or the next episode of the podcast coming out, things like that. If you just want that reminder, make sure you jump on and go ahead and subscribe to that email newsletter. Additionally, we talked about doing some book reviews, and we mentioned you might want to join in on some of the books with us. We'll make sure that we can add links to any books that we're going to be going through somewhere on our website, so you can find that. Click it, and if you want to go ahead and order it and get started on the book while we're doing it, then you can go ahead and do that as well. And we'll try to, if we're going to be doing a book related podcast, we'll try and put that out in the email too. So make sure you get on that email newsletter so that you can get that information ahead of time so you're not lagging a week behind. So if you want to do it along with us, you can do that. But thanks again so much for joining us today on this podcast, on this first podcast for Marriage Puzzle.
Yeah, like I said, next week we'll share more about us and our story and who we are and how we fell in love.
Yes. So we look so much forward to you joining us next week and every single week after that, where together we'll work on marriage one puzzle piece at a time. Have a great week.